Hello. My name's Jeremy Houck, and I'd like to thank you for making the choice to join us here at the Greenbrier Church Online. Today, our church family is participating in what we call our back to school blessing. We made the decision that every year on the Sunday before the students go back to school, we would take some time as a church family to pray for our students, our teachers, administrators, school staff, parents, and grandparents. But today we find ourselves also working through the book of James, trying to see how can we apply the teachings of Jesus to our everyday life. Today we discover that James, well, what he writes is really relevant for what we're doing here today. Last week we noticed that we have to be wise with our words because they have immense power in our lives as well as in the lives of others. This morning, James, he continues that discussion and he asks us a very probing question. Who is wise and understanding among you? Now, wisdom is a funny thing. We have more knowledge at our fingertips today than at any other time in all of human history. Because of smartphones, AI, and the internet, we have instant access to a wealth of information, all at the drop of a hat. We can know who sang a certain song and did that song ever chart. We can know who won the Battle of Waterloo, and we can even figure out how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop, all in an instant. But with all of this instant access to all of this knowledge and information, we have to ask ourselves, are we any wiser? Or are we just simply drowning in an information overload? Because there is a huge difference between information and the ability to apply that information. Or as Miles Kingdon once said, knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. James continues this section on wisdom by asking in verses 10 and 11, and so blessings and cursings come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? When we use our mouths to bless God, and then we turn around and use the very same mouth to tear someone down who is created in the image of God, James says that we are lacking wisdom. Basically, it's like drinking a big glass of orange juice right after you brushed your teeth. Just doesn't feel right or taste right. It's not right. James understands that wisdom has nothing to do with our intelligence and everything to do with our character. That's what he says in verse 13. If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. Now, obviously, knowledge and education are not enough. It's not enough just to claim to be wise or to understand how something works. James says you have to show your wisdom by the way that you live. The phrase honorable life in the text is what we're all striving for. But there are times when we confuse living an honorable life with possessions and power and popularity and pleasure. James is very quick to tell us when we chase after the things this broken world has to offer, we show that we have lost our way and, well, wisdom eludes us. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're having a conversation with James and he says, "Are you wise?" Maybe in a moment of pride, you would say, "Well, yeah, I'm wise," only to quickly realize that that first question sets up the second question. Because he's going to ask, then can you show me your wisdom by the way that you live your life on a day-to-day basis? James has already gone back to what he said in James 2:18, "I will show you my faith by what I do." It's not a matter of what you say, it's a matter of how you live. It's not about the diplomas on your wall or the letters behind your name. It's the temperament that you have as well as how you get along with other people. That's true wisdom. In verse 17 of our text this morning, James gives us the characteristics of a wise person. And I thought since this is our back to school blessing, maybe we should just have a little pop quiz. I want us to look at the characteristics found in verse 17 and ask ourselves a few questions. James says, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It's also peace loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism, and is always sincere. So the first question of our quiz is, do I compromise my integrity? If we're wise, our lives will be pure and we will see the purity in other people's lives as well. But a foolish heart sees life and people through the distortion of wickedness. There's this kind of paranoia that attaches itself to those that are unwise. An impure heart always assumes betrayal and deceit. People with impure hearts live lives that are filled with deception and an attempt to deceive everyone around them. When our heart is pure, we can see through the deceptions and the distortions of the truth. Having a pure heart is primarily about your motives. Now, we have to take an honest look at what we're really trying to achieve in this world. Are we honestly wanting a fair and objective solution, or are we just trying to maneuver things so that we get our own way? In verse 16, James just said, "For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind." He is specifically contrasting a pure heart to a foolish heart filled with envy and self seeking. In our desire to be wise, we have to be pure, but we can't settle to be pure like ivory soap. You understand that, right? Well, if you don't get it, just think back to their original advertising slogan. They used to say that ivory soap was 99.44% pure. And they never tell you what's in that other 66% or 0.66%. 99% might be good for soap unless the other 1% is toxic. In the same way, only having integrity 99% of the time, it's not really living a life of integrity, is it? I mean, who would want to be married to somebody who's faithful 99 out of 100 days? Question two. Do you provoke people's anger? Now, before Trista and I got married, I asked my grandparents for some advice because they'd been married for over 50 years. And my grandfather told me that in a good marriage, you have to know what to overlook. And I think about that a lot because there are some things that we need to get angry about. There are some things we need to defend, but foolish people are looking to be offended at every single opportunity. Do you know people who are always looking for a fight? Have you ever met someone who's always looking for an argument? I mean, there's this preacher story about a guy who was so argumentative, he only ate food that disagreed with his stomach. Wise people know that some things are better to just let go of. Peace loving is not the same as peace at any price because that kind of peace never lasts. Wise people have the ability to do the difficult work of resolution that brings lasting peace in our relationships. And that's far more valuable than winning an argument. And it's far more important than being able to out scream, out yell, out talk, out debate another person. And it's much more valuable than justifying our own actions. I think James is saying if your go to emotion is to fight, you're not wise. Solomon would say you were a fool. Actually, he says in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 3, any fool can start arguments. The wise thing is to stay out of them. Question three. Do you consider other people's feelings? Have you ever played the game, I've had a worse day than you? You know how the game is played. All you simply do is no matter what somebody else experiences, then you just let them know that their day is not as bad as the day that you've had, the day you've experienced. So the husband comes home and he's wore out and he looks at his wife and he goes, "Oh, baby, today was horrible. My boss called me in and he's not happy about this project that I'm working on. And then the air conditioner went out in the office and I spilled coffee all over my pants. And we had this meeting that ran long and I didn't get to eat lunch today and I'm starving." And the wife says, "Huh, that really sounds like a picnic compared to my day because your son, well, he tried to baptize the cat in the toilet. And while I was cleaning up that mess, the roast that we were going to have for supper, well, it burned in the oven. And today was so hectic, I didn't even have a chance to get the laundry started so that you could have something clean to wear tomorrow." Now, honestly, Both of those days sound pretty bad. But whenever we try to minimize someone else's pain, we're just playing a completely different version of who's greatest in the kingdom. You see, we want the attention, we want the pity. And so we have to have the harder day, the more difficult circumstances, when the truth is that both of you had a horrible, terrible, no good day. There's no need to minimize it. People who possess wisdom are considerate towards others. Wise people are free to allow others to have bad days, experience frustrations and disappointments. And instead of having this need to just dismiss those feelings, wise people are willing to step into the dysfunction and offer compassion and concern. They are intent on fulfilling Paul's command to rejoice with those who rejoice, to weep with those who weep. Basically, it means they're looking for ways to connect with other people. I truly believe that we walk away from the Spirit of God every time that we operate out of our pride. A wise and considerable spirit cares about and validates the feelings and the experiences of other people. Question 4. Do you criticize other people's decisions or suggestions? The teacher says in Proverbs 12:15, fools always think their own way is best, but wise people listen to advice. A wise person knows that they can learn from anyone in any situation, while a fool is defensive and stubborn. Let me put a pin here and say that I believe there are times that we need to be stubborn. When Tristan and I were raising our two boys, we established boundaries and they pushed against the boundaries because that's their job, and we stubbornly held the boundaries because that's our job. But for the most part, I've learned that it's almost always a better option to be able to reason with one another. The stubborn person might win an argument, but they trash a relationship. People who are wise have an open mind. They understand that there might be something that I don't know. A wise person is someone that you can reason with, talk with, have a conversation, a dialogue with. The Bible says if you're wise, you're reasonable, you're open to suggestions. Any fool would say, don't confuse me with the facts. I've already made up my mind. I've thought about it. I've prayed about it. I cannot be persuaded. And when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. Honestly, that sounds like every single political conversation and discussion that's been had in the last 15 years. People of wisdom are rarely defensive. Have you noticed that as our culture grows more and more politically correct, we have placed a premium on being oversensitive, being the victim, being offended? If somebody has a different point of view, we can take it as a personal criticism about our worth, about our person. If somebody disagrees with us, we can take it as a personal slap, but then we'd be foolish. James says wise people are different. They're willing to listen and to learn from anyone and anything. They understand that there is wisdom in the experiences and the counsel of others. So if you want to be wise, don't be so defensive. If it's true, listen to it, learn from it. If it's false, ignore it, forget it. If I'm wise, I'll be open to reason. I won't criticize your suggestions. I'll listen to them and I will pull the truth out and grow from the truth that I find. Last question. Do you like to emphasize the mistakes of others while hiding your own weaknesses? The wise person understands that we're all broken people living in a broken world. Foolish people feel like it's their responsibility to point out the sins, the mistakes of others, and to pile on them every time they make a mistake. James says wisdom is full of mercy. Now, there are several ways that we allow this foolish behavior to creep into our lives. Maybe you use somebody's past as leverage against them. When you want your way, you go, do you remember the time that you? Or maybe you just have this habit of getting historical with other people. Every time a mistake is made, you go, oh, well, remember what you did 2 weeks ago, 20 years ago? The fool needs to point out the sins of others in an effort to elevate their status. They need to remind everybody about how many times you failed, you messed up, while ignoring their own failures. That's nothing more than hypocrisy. A wise person doesn't try to hide or to disguise their own weaknesses. James actually writes that a wise person is without hypocrisy. If you're smart and wise, you're not a phony. You don't try to be something you're not. If we're going to become what Christ has called us to become, we got to quit pretending that we go to a church filled with perfect people. Because God established the church family to be a place where real people with real sins, real faults, real problems, real hang-ups, we can all come together and journey to the cross where we find real forgiveness and hope. A wise Christian is genuine, real, authentic. They don't have to pretend they're perfect. If I'm wise, I'm not going to disguise my weaknesses. Now, I understand there are so many phony relationships today. People are trying constantly to put forth this fake idea of who they are. They try to pretend to be something they're not. It's foolish to pretend you're perfect, that you've got it all together, because the truth is, we all know that everybody has sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And when you start confessing your weaknesses, I'm not going to be shocked because I already know that you have failed in certain areas of your life. You're just not willing to admit it. Followers of Christ are called to encourage and to give mercy, not just to show sympathy. You don't just say, I feel for you, but we both know that you brought this on yourself. A wise person doesn't need to point out and to harp on the mistakes of others. They're full of mercy, ready to give others what they need, not what they deserve. Because that's what happens at the table, isn't it? We go to the table and we sit down and we take the emblems, the bread and the cup, and we are reminded that we are given what we need, not what we deserve. So, how did you do? Are you living wisdom personified, or are you honest enough to admit that you don't have it all together? If you're willing to be honest, then the table is the place to admit that and to say, I failed, I'm struggling, I'm not what I need to be. And as you confess your sin and your shortcoming to God, you can live with the trust and the hope and the understanding that God loves you enough to pour out his mercy and his grace. And the bread and the cup remind us of his amazing love. I hope you have a wonderful week. Never forget how deeply you're loved, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.